देशपांडे मैम, मेरी आवाज आपको आ रही है?
यस सर।
हेलो।
हेलो। हाँ यस सर। एम आई ऑडिबल?
देशपांडे मॅम, आपण लेक्चर स्टार्ट करू शकतो?
चालेल, केलं तर शेअर करते मी स्क्रीन.
यस मैम.
ओके.
महाराष्ट्र एजुकेशन सोसाइटी का आबा साहेब गरवारे महाविद्यालय और एमए फर्स्ट पार्ट और एमएससी फर्स्ट पार्ट के स्तर पर जो एडिशनल क्रेडिट पेपर है, जिसका नाम भली भांति आपको पता है, ह्यूमन राइट्स मॉड्यूल नंबर 2. आज के सेशन में प्रोफेसर अर्चना देशपांडे मैम का लेक्चर्स हो रहा है. मैं पहला उनके परिचय उनका पहले सभी स्टूडेंट को दे दूं. इससे पहले इस एडिशनल क्रेडिट पेपर की जो इंचार्ज है डॉक्टर मधुरा दामले मैम, इनका मैं स्वागत करता हूं. साथ साथ एक फोन कॉल पर जिन्होंने हाँ कहा, ऐसी प्रोफेसर अर्चना देशपांडे मैम का भी मैं महाविद्यालय की ओर से और सभी विद्यार्थियों की ओर से उनका स्वागत करता हूं. प्रोफेसर अर्चना देशपांडे मैम मॉडर्न लॉ कॉलेज पुणे में टीचिंग के पद पर है, असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर के तौर पर. सावित्रीबाई फूले पुणे यूनिवर्सिटी से यह संलग्न महाविद्यालय है. मैम का एलएलबी और एलएलएम कंप्लीट हुआ है और साथ साथ कई सारे रिसर्च पेपर मैम ने लिखे हुए हैं. आज के सेशन में प्रोफेसर अर्चना देशपांडे मैम ह्यूमन राइट्स मॉडल 2 के पाठ्यक्रम को लेकर आपके साथ चर्चा करेगी. मैं बहुत विनम्रता के साथ प्रोफेसर अर्चना देशपांडे मैम को विनती करता हूँ कि वह इस सेशन की शुरुआत करें. अर्चना देशपांडे मैम.
Thank you sir. Thank you for inviting me for this lecture. Thank you so much. First I would like to share my screen. Okay, so welcome all the students for this second lecture of human rights of vulnerable and disadvantaged groups. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So my topic for the today's lecture is divided into two parts. Initially, again, I'm going to define or I'm going to explain a little bit about the vulnerable and disadvantaged groups and the customary social, economical, and cultural problems of these vulnerable and disadvantaged groups. I would like to ask you, okay, is it okay to all of you to go with English, Hindi, Marathi, all the three languages? Okay, I'm assuming that all of you okay with English, Hindi, and Marathi. So my today's lecture is divided into two parts. First, there is a general introduction, and in the second part, I'm going to deal with the vulnerable groups, that is the migrants, stateless persons, or the sex workers, etc. Okay. So when we consider these vulnerable groups, these people or these groups are sections of the society who are susceptible to physical or emotional injury. That means they are less advantaged groups, or they are present at the less advantageous position and easily get affected by the physical injury or the emotional injury. That means these people, these sections, these group of people are vulnerable, are easily attacked by the dominating groups. So vulnerable groups are those groups of people who may find it difficult to lead a comfortable life. When we compare with the normal people, these of groups or the sections are facing more problems, are facing difficulties in living a normal life. So, due to this adverse socio-economical, cultural, and other practices which are present in this society, these people are facing lots of difficulties in day-to-day life. So, what is the meaning of this vulnerable group? In the language of human rights, they are defined as a group of population who often encounter the discriminatory treatment. That means the individuals who are cognitively impaired, or we can say there are a number of examples of these vulnerable groups. एक तो है ये जो vulnerable group के अंडर में जो लोग आते हैं, जो people आते हैं, तो उनको discriminatory treatment मिलती है. Okay, उनको equal treatment नहीं मिलती, जैसे normal people को मिलती है वैसे treatment नहीं मिलती. Okay, they need some kind of special attention. वो खुद को प्रोटेक्ट नहीं कर सकते. Okay, so the definition, if we consider a certain group of population who often encounter discriminatory treatment or need some kind of special attention for protection of state to avoid exploitation or from a harmful environment. So people who are discriminated based on sex, race, by birth in a particular community, religious or disability. तो अगर हमने देखा जाए तो ये एग्जांपल्स क्या क्या है. जो इंडिविजुअल है वो कॉग्निटिवली इम्पेयर्ड है. फॉर एग्जांपल होमलेस पीपल है, जो उनका द इंडिविजुअल्स हु आर लिविंग इन अनस्टेबल हाउसिंग सिचुएशंस, और जो बच्चे फॉस्टर केयर में रहते हैं, या फिर जो इंडिविजुअल्स है, पर्सन्स है, वो मेंटल है और सर्टेन हेल्थ इश्यूज फेस कर रहे हैं, या फिर इंडिविजुअल्स है वो सफर कर रहे हैं क्रोनिक या फिर एक्यूट इलनेस से, या फिर इंडिविजुअल्स हु आर एक्सपीरियंसिंग वायलेंस, एक्सपीरियंसिंग अब्यूज, एक्सपीरियंसिंग ट्रॉमा. अगेन देखा जाए तो एल्डरली पीपल है जो इनको ड्यू टू देयर एज या ड्यू टू द इलनेस वो कुछ अर्न नहीं कर सकते. ओके, उनके पास पैसा नहीं है. तो ऑल दीज आर कंसिडर्ड अंडर द वल्नरेबल ग्रुप्स. So, what is the definition of this vulnerable group? So according to European Foundation for the Improvement of Living Working Condition, तो मीनिंग क्या है वो vulnerable group का, vulnerable people का? So I have highlighted these, or I have underlined these words which are very important when we consider the vulnerable groups. तो ऐसा ग्रुप है, ऐसे लोग हैं, ऐसा सेक्शन है सोसाइटी में, वो क्या करते हैं, एक्सपीरियंस करते हैं हायर रिस्क ऑफ पॉवर्टी रहती है. इट मे बी ड्यू टू द उनके पास एजुकेशन नहीं है, उनके पास पैसे नहीं है, उनके पास या फिर दे आर सफरिंग फ्रॉम एनी हेल्थ इश्यूज. ओके, So major point related to this vulnerable group is higher risk of poverty. They experience the higher risk of poverty. And social exclusion, very important is the social exclusion. सोसाइटी में उनको उनका हिस्सा मतलब वो कुछ पार्टिसिपेट नहीं कर सकते, सोसाइटी उनको एज इट इज एक्सेप्ट नहीं करती, सो दे आर excluded from the society. Then general population. So when we compare with general population, these vulnerable groups are experiencing a higher risk of poverty and social exclusion. Again, ethnic minorities रहते हैं, माइग्रेंट रहते हैं, जो एक जगह से दूसरी जगह पे जाते हैं, वहां पे सेटल होना चाहते हैं, डिसेबल्ड पीपल रहते हैं, होमलेस रहते हैं, और ऑल दीज आर स्ट्रगलिंग विद द सब्सटेंस ऑफ अब्यूज. आइसोलेटेड एल्डरली पीपल, जिनके बच्चे उनके पास नहीं रहते, या फिर वो अलग रहते हैं, ओके, या उनकी परवाह नहीं करते, घर से निकाला दिया गया, बाहर उनके घर से बाहर निकाला जाता है, या फिर चिल्ड्रन, या फिर वुमेन. ऑल दीज आर फेसिंग डिफिकल्टीज इन लिविंग डे टू डे लाइफ. जस्ट अ मिनट प्लीज. Sorry. So low levels of education, unemployment or underemployment, refugees, stateless persons, victims of war, all these are considered under the umbrella of vulnerable groups. Again, we have another example that the indigenous peoples, immigrant people, migrant, all these are, and according to this European Foundation, उन्होंने बहुत अच्छी तरह से definition दिया है कि कौन है ये vulnerable groups. That means they are facing poverty, the problem of poverty, and they are excluded from the society. और क्या examples है? तो ethnic minorities है, migrants है, disabled people है, homeless peoples है, elderly people, that means aged people है, children है, women है. In the previous lecture, you have studied the vulnerable group. Under this vulnerable group, women and children. So, remaining part we are going to deal in this lecture. So, meaning of disadvantaged group. See to it, vulnerable group, उसका तो definition हमने देख लिया, लेकिन disadvantaged groups क्या है? Disadvantaged groups are the people who are denied free access to the guaranteed rights in their free exercise. Okay, so everybody is knowing about the Constitution of India. The Constitution of India is present at the highest और टॉप लेवल पे है. ओके, इन दिस कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ इंडिया हमको कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ने राइट्स दिए हैं, हम जो भारत का नागरिकत्व है हमको मिला है, ओके, बाय बर्थ है या फिर बाय एनी अदर रीजन है. तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ने हमको फंडामेंटल राइट्स दिए हैं. पार्ट 3 ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन डिफाइंस गिव्स द फंडामेंटल राइट्स. दीज राइट्स आर द बेसिक ह्यूमन राइट्स. तो ये जो बेसिक राइट्स है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल राइट टू हेल्थ है, राइट टू आइडेंटिटी है, राइट टू फूड है, राइट टू एजुकेशन है, राइट टू लाइफ एंड लिबर्टी है, राइट टू प्रोटेक्शन है, राइट टू फंडामेंटल फ्रीडम, राइट टू फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच एंड एक्सप्रेशन है, देन राइट टू डिसेंट एंड सेफ एनवायरमेंट इंक्लूडिंग ड्रिंकिंग वाटर है. ऑल दीज आर फंडामेंटल राइट्स विच आर guaranteed under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. तो ये जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ने हमको जो फंडामेंटल राइट्स दिए हैं, when we consider these disadvantaged groups, these groups are, or these peoples are denied from the free access of these guaranteed rights. उनको एक्सेस नहीं मिलता यहाँ पे, उनका एक्सेस डिनाई किया जाता है, उनको राइट टू एजुकेशन नहीं मिलता। जो बच्चे फॉस्टर केयर में पढ़ते हैं या फिर जिन बच्चों के माँ बाप नहीं है, या फिर माँ बाप है लेकिन उनके पास पैसे नहीं है, ड्यू टू द पॉवर्टी, वो पढ़ नहीं पाते, उनको एजुकेशन नहीं ले सकते। एजेड पीपल है, उनके पास पैसे नहीं है, वो अपना खुद का ट्रीटमेंट नहीं कर सकते। ओके, so that's why I have explained these are the basic fundamental rights which have been guaranteed under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. When we consider these disadvantaged groups, these people are denied this access, this free access to the guaranteed rights. These are fundamental rights, these are guaranteed rights. Everybody is having free access to this. But this disadvantaged groups, when we consider this migrant ho ya fir this individuals who are suffering from mental or any health issue, or homeless ho, ya fir children who are present in foster care, individuals who are suffering from or experiencing the abuse or violence. So based on this socio-economic and cultural perspective, classification of these groups vary from country to country. ऐसा नहीं है कि ये सिर्फ इंडिया में ही होता है. Now, this can happen in US also. This can happen in we can able to see in Australia, in Japan, China, everywhere. Human rights are the basic fundamental rights, but these disadvantaged groups are considered or based differentiation, discrimination on the basis of classification, and this may vary from country to country. So in general, women, children, socially, economically, culturally deprived sections, disabled people, minorities have been forming these disadvantaged groups. So when we consider these disadvantaged groups or the vulnerable groups, poverty is the main contributing factor towards the degradation of the status of these people that are classified as disadvantaged groups. अगेन घुमा फिरा के वो बात वहीं पे आती है, ये जो सभी लोग हैं जिनका जिक्र हमने पहले 2-3 स्लाइड्स में किया है कि ये जो माइग्रेंट्स है, स्टेटलेस पर्सन्स है, वुमेन है, चिल्ड्रन है, देन एजेड पर्सन्स है, सेक्स वर्कर्स है, ऑल दीज उनको डिस्क्रिमिनेटरी ट्रीटमेंट दिया जाता है, उनका एक्सप्लॉयटेशन किया जाता है। ड्यू टू दिस उनको एजुकेशन नहीं मिलता, अच्छी तरह से एजुकेशन नहीं मिलता तो वो कुछ कमा नहीं पाते, उनके पास पैसा नहीं होता। दैट्स व्हाई पॉवर्टी इज द मेन कंट्रीब्यूटिंग फैक्टर टुवर्ड्स द डिग्रेडेशन ऑफ द स्टेटस ऑफ दीज पीपल। So they cannot stand with the other sections of the society. Now, the concept of these disadvantaged people or the vulnerable groups. So when we consider the historical evolution of this concept, ऐसा नहीं था कि कल या परसों या फिर 4 दिन पहले, 2 साल पहले, 10 साल पहले ये आया है concept. No, this concept is as old as the human history. From ancient to modern times, in every society, and again stating this word, that is, in every society, number of instances could be found where in a section of people in each society are given a different kind of treatment. ऐसा नहीं है कि अब्यूज, वुमेन का अब्यूज यहाँ पे इंडिया में होता है, डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस इंडिया में है, नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है। आप कहीं पे भी जाओ, यूएस में जाओ, यूके में जाओ, जापान में जाओ, चाइना में जाओ, सब जगह पे जहाँ पे सोसाइटी है, जहाँ पे ह्यूमन बीइंग्स है, वहाँ पे you will be able to find these vulnerable groups and disadvantaged groups. So from ancient to modern times, everywhere you will be able to see this kind of people. So in general, discrimination किस बेसिस पे होता है? Humiliation होता है, harassment होती है, intimidation होता है, exploitation होता है। See to it, हमारे यहाँ पे when we consider the India, पहले अनटचेबिलिटी था, दलित पीपल थे, ओके। उसके बाद सती कंसेप्ट था, अगर हस्बैंड की डेथ हो जाए तो जो वाइफ है उसको अग्नि में कूदना पड़ता था, दैट इज द सती। देवदासी, all these concepts are there from ancient to modern times. Recently I have, please mute yourself. So recently ही मैंने न्यूज पे पढ़ा, एक लड़की थी, उसको जिंदा जलाने की कोशिश की। So till today we are seeing these vulnerable groups and disadvantaged groups. So the idea behind such a practices is to keep away such people from the forefront of the societal activities and depriving them of their life and liberty. But lekin life and liberty is the basic fundamental right which has been guaranteed by the Indian Constitution under Article 21. So further keeping them aloof, depriving their economic and intellectual capacities to subserve the needs of the rich and dominant people of the society. तो क्या होता है, जो डोमिनेंट पीपल रहते हैं, रिच पीपल रहते हैं सोसाइटी के, दे आर डोमिनेटिंग ओवर दिस वल्नरेबल ग्रुप, डिसएडवांटेज ग्रुप्स. So when we consider this discrimination, डिस्क्रिमिनेशन जब हम बोलते हैं तो वो टू टाइप्स के रहते हैं. एक तो डायरेक्टली डिस्क्रिमिनेशन होता है और दूसरा रहता है इनडायरेक्टली डिस्क्रिमिनेशन. डायरेक्टली डिस्क्रिमिनेशन में क्या होता है, इट मींस एनी पर्सन और ग्रुप ऑफ पर्संस और ग्रुप ऑफ पीपल treated less favorably and easily exposed to societal risk. For example, woman is a good example of this direct discrimination. अगर एक फैमिली है, नो डाउट करंटली या फिर ये प्रैक्टिसेस सिटीज में कम है, लेकिन जो गांव है वहां पे स्टिल सच टाइप ऑफ प्रैक्टिसेस आर डेली हैपनिंग. अगर बच्चे हैं, लड़का है, लड़की है, पैसे ज्यादा नहीं है, तो फर्स्ट प्रेफरेंस विल बी गिवन टू द एजुकेशन ऑफ द child or that boy instead of giving education to girl child. लड़कियों को बोलना मतलब लड़कियों को कहा जाता है कि आप घर में ही रहो, घर का काम करो, सीखने की कोई ज्यादा जरूरत नहीं है. सीख के क्या करोगी, पढ़ के क्या करोगी, चुलाई तो संभालना है, घर ही तो संभालना है, ओके, बच्चों को ही तो संभालना है. So it is the example of direct discrimination. So in this process, many a times these people encounter difficulties in exercising their legal rights freely, as guaranteed by both an international law of human rights and by the constitution of a country. Constitution में तो ऐसा नहीं दिया गया है कि सिर्फ लड़कों को ही पढ़ाई करने का हक है और लड़कियों को नहीं है. No, I am neutral. It's my disclaimer. मैं यहाँ पे disclaimer कहती हूँ कि मेरा I am not favoring the girl child. I am not not a feminist. But see to it, Constitution में ऐसा कहीं पे mention नहीं किया गया है. Life, liberty, right to education, earn, equal earning. All these rights which has been given under the Constitution of Indian Constitution, उसमें he or she ऐसा कहीं पे नहीं लिखा है. So this is the direct discrimination. Second type है indirect discrimination. Any practices employed intentionally or unintentionally which exposes people of a particular category to specific disadvantageous situation compared with others unless it is objectively justified by a legitimate aim and the means of achieving that aim are appropriate. When we consider this discrimination के भी examples है. Okay, abuse किया जाता है. That means these are the synonyms to this discrimination. Harassment, humiliation, abuse. These are the common factors. So harassment है. This is because of segregation of specific group of people with उनको aim रहता है to deprive their dignity in order to create an intimidating hostile, degrading, humiliating, offensive environment. So economic factor contribute करता है. We have seen poverty है. Due to this, they are vulnerable. It cannot include other aspects of discrimination based on gender, disability, social, cultural, customary, caste, and other types of discriminatory practices that are prevalent in each society. कई बार ऐसा किया जाता है कि नहीं, 10 साल की, 12 साल की, 15 साल की लड़की है, उसकी शादी की जाती है. Customary practices, under the umbrella of customary practices. Caste, लोग क्या कहेंगे, समाज क्या कहेगा. Okay, so girl child is discriminated on the basis of, or she is, or that girl is exploited, or that girl is denied the free access to the rights which have been guaranteed under the Indian Constitution. So when we consider these kinds of disadvantaged groups, we have women, girls, children, refugees, internally displaced persons, statelessness, national minorities, migrant workers, then national migrant workers, disabled persons, elderly persons, HIV positive persons or AIDS patients, then sexual minorities are there, LGBTQ are there, lesbian, gay, transgender people are there, or Roma, Gypsies, Sintis, these are covered under the indigenous people. So these are the examples, or these are the sections of the society who are covered under the disadvantaged groups or vulnerable groups. Now, when we consider these problems of these vulnerable groups or disadvantaged groups from ancient to modern times, these peoples are targeting, or these peoples are the main targets of the dominating sections of the society. So they are often harassed on the grounds of customary practices, social practices, or the certain cultural factors. So they are often harassed. In a number of instances, they are denied life and liberty to enjoy their human rights, which have been guaranteed by the, not only by the international community, but by the constitution. So अच्छा एग्जाम्पल है फ्रॉम एंशियंट टू मॉडर्न टाइम्स वल्नरेबल ग्रुप है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल मैंने लिया है कि बाबा प्रॉपर्टी राइट्स है. 2005 में अमेंडमेंट आया, चेंजेस किए गए सक्सेशन एक्ट में, तो डॉटर को कोपार्सनरी राइट्स दिए गए. ओके, फिर बाद में मैटरनिटी रिलीफ एक्ट बनाया गया. ओके, ऑल दीज, वो एक्ट बनाने से पहले ये जो डॉटर थी, लड़की थी, या फिर फैमिली में जो कोई फीमेल मेंबर्स थे, तो उनको राइट नहीं था. कस्टमरी प्रैक्टिसेस चलता आ रहा था. कर्ता जो है वही डिसाइड करेगा कि बाबा अपनी प्रॉपर्टी किसको जाएगी, सक्सेशन में किसको मिलेगी. लेकिन 2005 में एक्ट चेंज हुआ, उसमें चेंजेस किए गए और डॉटर को कोपार्सनरी राइट्स दिए गए. Apart from the basic economic aspects of poverty, customs and traditions practices in each society also keeping these vulnerable and disadvantaged groups away from the mainstream activities of the society. What are the problems of this? So, there are n number of problems. अभी मैंने वो कोपार्सनरी का बोला कि बाबा लड़कियों को कुछ हक ही नहीं था, अभी कुछ है लड़कों को मिलता था. जिस नेशनल लेवल पे मैंने एग्जांपल दिया. ओके, हमारे इंडिया में एग्जैक्टली व्हाट हैपेंड. नाउ आई वुड लाइक टू पुट वन एग्जांपल एट द इंटरनेशनल लेवल. So everybody must be knowing about celebrity like okay, so Oprah Winfrey, who is American talk show host and television producer. Komal Tarte, please mute yourself. Okay. So Oprah Winfrey is the American talk show host. She is also a television producer, actress, author, and philanthropist. In her video, she has told that she was earning $400 for one TV show, whereas in that same TV show, her colleague who is a male, was earning $800. That is totally opposed. Means double the amount, double the salary, double the payment which has been given to her. So यहाँ पे सिर्फ इंडिया में ही डिस्क्रिमिनेशन होता है ऐसा नहीं है, यूएस में भी होता है. ओके, so we have taken this fundamental rights, the concept of these fundamental rights from the USA, from the Bill of Rights. So when we consider the problems, or various committees has been created at the international level, and then United Nations has adopted a general framework to remove, to eradicate, to address these adverse situations faced by these vulnerable groups and disadvantaged groups. उन्होंने क्या क्या suggestions दिए ये देख committees ने, कि ये एग्जाम्पल है ऑपरा विंफ्रे का. उनको सिर्फ $400 मिलता था एक टीवी शो के लिए, या लेकिन उनका जो मेल कलीग था तो उनको $800 मिलता था. तो first suggestion has been given by these committees to the United Nations is equal pay for equal work. काम कर रहा है इक्वल पे होना चाहिए. देयर इज नो डिस्क्रिमिनेशन ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ जेंडर, मेल है फीमेल है, नो, दैट शुड नॉट बी डिस्क्रिमिनेशन. सेकंड, इंडिपेंडेंट मैकेनिज्म और कमीशन टू एस्टैब्लिश एंड टू डील विथ ईच कैटेगरी ऑफ पीपल. थर्ड, बेसिक कंपल्सरी एजुकेशन. दैट्स व्हाई आवर 86th amendment in Indian Constitution, right to education, RTE, Article 21A has been incorporated. Basic compulsory education must be given. Next, special concession to these people. जो elderly people है, जो women's है, right है, under Article 15 and 16, rather Article 15 में clause 3 है, वहाँ पे ये जो women है और children है, state can make laws specially for these children, for the protection of children, for the protection of women, or for the upliftment of women and children. Provision to enable them to take part in governance. 33% आरक्षण रहता है. Okay, independent forums to express their grievance. RTI है, right to know. Easy accessibility to medical and health care, and efforts to raise the standard of living, subsidized food supply, eradicate malnutrition, abolish any customary practices that threaten their survival, overall social security. So these problems are related to these issues. So issues रिमूव करने के लिए, उनको सॉल्यूशन देने के लिए ये जो कमिटीज थी, तो यूनाइटेड नेशन ने एक जनरल फ्रेमवर्क बनाया और जनरल फ्रेमवर्क में ये पॉइंट्स का इंक्लूड किया. Now coming to the next part of my slide or my lecture, is the status of social and economically disadvantaged people. तो यहाँ पे status of, I'm going to deal with the indigenous people क्या होते हैं और उनको उनका upliftment के लिए United Nations how they played a major role. Then status of SC and ST, scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, and other indigenous people in Indian scenario. Then एजेड पीपल है, डिसेबल्ड पीपल है, उनके ह्यूमन राइट्स क्या है, और हाउ एट इंटरनेशनल लेवल एंड नेशनल लेवल these rights have been recognized by different treaties and by different conventions, and minorities and human rights. Now, when we consider the status of economically disadvantaged people, human rights belongs to everyone, regardless of any distinction. So when we consider these indigenous peoples are belonging to scheduled caste or scheduled tribes, older persons, persons with disabilities, and minority rights. So United Nations ने क्या major role किया? When the United Nations has been carried out a survey, they found that there are nearly 370 million indigenous people living in the world according to available estimates. And these people are affected by historical colonization and invasion of their territories. They face discrimination because of their distinct culture, because of their distinct identities, and because of their different ways of life. उनको मार्जिनलाइजेशन फेस करना पड़ा, जेंडर डिस्क्रिमिनेशन होता है उनका, वो बहुत पुअर रहते हैं, गरीब है, वो एक्सट्रीम पॉवर्टी है वहां पे, अदर ह्यूमन राइट्स वायलेशंस होते हैं, they often dragged into armed conflict. These groups are mostly found in USA, in Latin America, in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and many other countries around the world. So, following issues are the particular concern to these indigenous people. So, क्या-क्या issues है these vulnerable groups of these, or we can say these indigenous peoples के? Access to land and ancestral territories, access to justice and strengthening of indigenous customary law and justice system, impact of mining and other extractive industries on indigenous people, then lack of right to education and health. उनको पता ही नहीं है these are the basic fundamental rights, so they are denied the free access to these rights. Discriminatory practices and denial of rights of indigenous women, children and youth, and review reform of legislation. तो जो भी कुछ एक्ट किए गए थे या फिर कहीं कभार मतलब उनके लिए कुछ लेजिस्लेशन ही नहीं थे, तो रिव्यू किया गया एंड उनके लिए स्पेसिफिकली फॉर देम एनैक्टमेंट किया गया. तो यूनाइटेड नेशंस Indigenous Peoples Partnership, which was launched in 2011. ये एक collaborative framework था at international level, at the global level. वहाँ पे different organizations, different communities एक साथ आए. कौन-कौन से थे? International Labour Organization, 3 to 8 United Nation at लेवल पे है. यूनाइटेड नेशन के अंदर डिफरेंट 15 to 16 डिफरेंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस है. आउट ऑफ दीज ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस एक है इंटरनेशनल लेबर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, सेकंड है ऑफिस ऑफ द यूनाइटेड नेशंस हाई कमिश्नर फॉर ह्यूमन राइट्स, थर्ड है यूनाइटेड नेशंस चिल्ड्रंस फंड, हम यूनिसेफ बोलते हैं उसको, यूनाइटेड नेशंस डेवलपमेंट प्रोग्राम, एंड United Nations Population Fund recently signed on this part or this collaborative framework. So, United Nations Indigenous Peoples Partnership was launched in 2011, and this United Nations के partnership कौन-कौन involve है, कौन सी organizations involve है? तो International Labour Organization है, यूनाइटेड नेशंस हाई कमिश्नर फॉर ह्यूमन राइट्स है, यूनाइटेड नेशंस चिल्ड्रंस फंड है, एंड यूनाइटेड नेशंस डेवलपमेंट प्रोग्राम है. तो रोल क्या है एक्चुअली यूनाइटेड नेशन का? development of human rights standards on indigenous people, like Declaration on Rights of Indigenous People and United Development Group Guidelines on Indigenous Peoples issue. उनके जो कुछ प्रॉब्लम्स है वो डे टू डे लाइफ में जो कुछ इश्यूज फेस करते हैं या फिर उनको डिस्क्रिमिनेटरी ट्रीटमेंट मिलती है, उनका डेवलपमेंट करना या फिर उनको प्रोटेक्ट करना। ओके, उनको उनके हक का पता होना चाहिए, उनके लिविंग ऑफ स्टैंडर्ड में चेंज होना चाहिए। ओके, उनका डेवलपमेंट होना चाहिए। सो to train the United Nations country team and this OHCR field representative on indigenous issue, तो ट्रेनर्स या फिर एजेंट जो टीम है वो टीम प्रिपेयर करना और वो उन लोगों के हेल्प के लिए उनको वहां पे भेजना। Then build the capacity amongst the indigenous people, including through its fellowship programs for indigenous representative. कभी कभार ऐसा होता है कि वो फेलोशिप प्रोग्राम्स भी देते हैं जो पीपल है who are have want to be or want to do research in this field. This United Nations is providing fellowship programs for these indigenous representative. जो indigenous people है उनमें से अगर जो रिप्रेजेंटेटिव है तो वो अगर कुछ करना चाहते हैं तो उनके लिए भी ये फेलोशिप प्रोग्राम्स प्रोवाइड करते हैं। Constitution of Board of Trustees of the Voluntary Fund for Indigenous Populations comprised of 5 indigenous representatives. Again, United Nations is constituting an expert mechanism on the right of indigenous people. तो क्या किया उन्होंने? They have undertaken a study on these rights of indigenous people related to education, and in 2009, in September 2009, they have submitted this report to the Human Rights Council. Study and issues related to indigenous people on a permanent basis. टेम्पररी नहीं है, जो भी कुछ सोल्यूशन देना है, डिस्क्रिमिनेटरी है ट्रीटमेंट या फिर वल्नरेबल ग्रुप्स है, तो जो भी कुछ प्रॉब्लम्स है वो सॉल्व करना, उसके लिए एक परमानेंट सॉल्यूशन देना चाहिए और दिया गया बाय द यूनाइटेड नेशन। Facial rapporteur on the situation of human rights and fundamental freedoms of indigenous people. See to it, इंडिया है, यूएसए है, यूके है, बेसिक फंडामेंटल राइट्स लोगों को पता है, राइट टू एजुकेशन है, राइट टू लाइफ एंड लिबर्टी है, राइट ऑफ फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच एंड एक्सप्रेशन है, राइट टू गुड एनवायरमेंट है, राइट टू लिव इन पोल्यूशन फ्री एनवायरमेंट है। ओके, all these are also applicable, or these rights should be available to vulnerable groups or the disadvantaged groups. Observance of the first United Nations International Decade of the World's Indigenous People, which was followed by the second International Decade. So यूनाइटेड नेशन ने ये डिसाइड किया कि फर्स्ट यूनाइटेड नेशंस इंटरनेशनल डिकेड सेलिब्रेट किया जाएगा या फिर डिसाइड किया जाएगा ऑफ द वर्ल्ड्स इंडिजिनस पीपल। तो ड्यूरेशन क्या था? 1995 टू 2004। देन ये जो ऑफिस ऑफ द हाई कमिश्नर फॉर ह्यूमन राइट्स है, उन्होंने क्या किया? दे हैव कैरिड आउट अ रेंज ऑफ कंट्री स्पेसिफिक एंड रीजनल एक्टिविटीज टू एडवांस द राइट्स ऑफ indigenous people. It provides the support for the legislative initiative. Sorry. They have made, उन्होंने सपोर्ट किया एट द इंटरनेशनल लेवल, उन्होंने कन्वेंशंस बनाया, उन्होंने ट्रीटीज बनाई, और ये जो ट्रीटीज है, ये कन्वेंशंस है, दे आर प्रोवाइडिंग अ स्टैंडर्ड ऑपरेटिंग प्रोसीजर्स. They are providing certain rules, they are providing certain norms, they are providing certain rights which have been guaranteed by any nation. So United Nations has provided support for the legislative initiative and pursued thematic work on issues such as extractive industries and on the rights of isolated indigenous people. For example, Nagoya Protocol है, तो क्या है, अगर मैं इंडिया में हूँ, मैं आई एम एन इंडियन सिटीजन, मुझे कुछ प्रोडक्ट बनाना है बाय यूजिंग बेसिक इंग्रेडिएंट्स व्हिच आर अवेलेबल फ्रॉम द फॉरेस्ट एंड इंडिजिनस पीपल वहां पे रह रहे हैं, तो इफ आई एम यूजिंग दैट मटेरियल, इफ आई एम यूजिंग दैट थिंग, आई हैव टू शेयर माय बेनिफिट्स विद देम। मुझको इसलिए लेजिस्लेशन बनाया, उनके लिए एक्ट बनाया, ओके, कायदा तयार केला की समजा मी एखादा कुठलीही गोष्ट जर मी वापरली विच इज फ्रॉम आई हैव टेकन फ्रॉम दीज इंडिजिनस पीपल, तो इंडिजिनस पीपल को भी बेनिफिट होना चाहिए। बीइंग आई एम इन डोमिनेटिंग पोजीशन, ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि उनके जो हक है, उनका जो अधिकार है वो उनको मिलना चाहिए इन दिस इंडिजिनस पीपल। फॉर एग्जाम्पल, अगर मैंने कुछ बायो मटेरियल यूज किया, मैंने कुछ लीव्स यूज किए, ओके, नो डाउट लीव्स यूज किए किसी मेडिसिनल प्लांट के, तो जो मेडिसिनल प्लांट है विच इज प्रेजेंट इन दीज आर ओनली दिस इंडिजिनस पीपल आर नोइंग। मुझको मेरा जो बेनिफिट है, जो मुझको मेरे कमर्शियलाइजेशन से मिलेगा, so I should share with these indigenous people। तो उसके लिए कुछ regulations होने चाहिए, कुछ rules होने चाहिए, कुछ laws होने चाहिए। तो laws enactment में United Nations has provided support। Then United Nations Declaration for these indigenous people 2007। So this declaration in 2007, United Nations General Assembly has adopted a landmark declaration on the rights of indigenous people। ये डिक्लेरेशन क्या था? ये 2007 में आया। डिक्लेरेशन में बताया गया था कि यूनिवर्सल फ्रेमवर्क है ऑफ मिनिमम स्टैंडर्ड्स फॉर द सर्वाइवल, डिग्निटी, वेलबीइंग एंड राइट्स ऑफ द वर्ल्ड्स इंडिजिनस पीपल। इस डिक्लेरेशन में क्या मेंशन किया गया था? बोथ इंडिविजुअल एंड कलेक्टिव राइट्स, कल्चरल राइट्स एंड आइडेंटिटी, राइट टू एजुकेशन, राइट टू हेल्थ, right to employment, right to language and other rights. It outlaws discrimination against indigenous people and promote their full and effective participation in all matters that concern them. It also ensures their right to remain distinct and to pursue their own priorities in economic, social and cultural development. So दिस डिक्लेरेशन जो है वो एनकरेज करता है हार्मोनियस एंड कोऑपरेटिव रिलेशन बिटवीन स्टेट एंड द indigenous people. So it calls for the maintenance and strengthening of their cultural identities and also emphasizes their rights to pursue the development in keeping with their own needs and aspirations. So ये जो डिक्लेरेशन है ये मेनली स्टेट करता है कि ये जो नेटिव पीपल है they also have the right to the recognition, observance and enforcement of treaties concluded with the states for their succession. So next part is the SC and ST in the Indian legal scenario. So when we consider the hierarchical caste system along with other socio-cultural practices which are prevailing in India for many centuries has resulted in discrimination and inequality. So many of you have been or many of you have heard about the Chaturvarna system or the fourfold division of the society. So when we consider this Indian society in ancient times, it has been divided into 4 varnas और 4 classes. So टॉप में प्रियस थे या फिर ब्राह्मण्स थे, उसके बाद वॉरियर्स थे, क्षत्रिय बोलते हैं उसको, फिर उनके बाद फार्मर्स या फिर मर्चेंट्स थे, उनको हम वैश्यास बोलते हैं, एंड लास्टली जो आते थे वो क्राफ्ट्समैन थे, दैट मींस शूद्रास बोलते हैं. ओके, सो this is the hierarchical caste system present in the India in ancient times. So हम हमको इन एंशियंट पीरियड में ह्यूमन राइट अब्यूजेस भी देखने को मिलते हैं. ह्यूमन राइट अब्यूजेस अगेंस्ट दीज पीपल known as Dalit are the legion. So a random sampling of headlines have been seen or telling the stories that Dalit boy has been beaten to death for plucking the flowers, or Dalit has been tortured by the cops, or have been locked or killed in the lockup, or they are lynched, or Dalit woman has been gang raped, or police egged on mob to lynch the Dalit. So initially Dalits were not allowed to drink the water from the same wells. They were not allowed to attend the same temples. They were not allowed to wear the shoes in the presence of upper caste people, or they were not allowed to drink from the same cups in the tea stalls. A number of examples are there. So despite for this, under Article 17 of the Indian Constitution, untouchability, ये जो article है, despite the abolition of untouchability by the Article 17 of the Indian Constitution, segregation of persons belonging to scheduled caste persists, particularly in some pockets of rural India. Still in certain rural areas, we have been or we are observing such type of practices. That is access to places of worship, housing, hospitals, education, water sources, markets, and other public places. Recent judgment है, सबरीमला का judgment है. सबरीमला में जो menstruating woman है, उनको access नहीं दिया गया, नहीं था rather पहले, लेकिन Supreme Court has allowed the access. So these are the Indian legal scenario towards these people. So as per the Government of India 2011 census, when we consider this scheduled caste has been defined under. Please mute yourself. So when we consider this scheduled caste is defined under the Article 341. That is the caste, races, tribes, or groups within such a caste, races, or tribes which have been declared as such by the President of India through a public notification for each state. And definition has been given under Article 366, Clause 24. तो क्या है? Caste, races, or tribes, or part of or groups within such a caste, races, or tribes are deemed under Article 341 to be scheduled caste for the purposes of the Constitution. 2011 का जो census था Government of India का, according to that census, the Supreme Court scheduled caste constitutes around 16.2% of population of the country. Another discriminatory group is the scheduled tribes. Article 342 gives you the scheduled tribes, that is the tribal people or tribal communities which have been declared by the President through a public notification. So 366 article, clause 25 defines the scheduled tribes. So according to census 2011 census, scheduled tribes population कितना है? 8.2% of the total population. The state with the highest proportion of scheduled tribes is the Mizoram. Mizoram state में highest proportion है scheduled tribes का, that is 94.5%. While the lowest population है Goa में, that is the 0.04%. So by the virtue of Constitution 65th Amendment Act 1990, Government of India constituted for the promotion and protection of the legal rights of this SC and ST. So in 2004, these scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, in order to specifically cater to needs of this SC and ST, the commission has been, which was earlier has been formed, bifurcated this commission and constituted two separate commissions. 2004 में दो different commissions बनाए गए, one for SC and another for ST. That is the National Commission for Scheduled Caste and another National Commission for Scheduled Tribes. So judiciary has also played very important role by placing a number of cases upholding the validity of various acts of the government for the promotion and protection of the rights of these categories of people, and also directed the state means Maharashtra ho, Goa ho, Punjab ho, Haryana ho, okay, many a times to evolve a number of policy formulations in order to promote, in order to protect, and in order to preserve their interest. So when we consider this constitutional provision, each and every person must be knowing, must be or should know this provision. Article 14. Article 14 is right to equality. So right to equality and equal protection of law. State shall not deny to any person equality before the law or the equal protection of the laws within the territory of India. It also prohibits the practice of discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of the birth. So Article 40 is for the equality, equal protection of the law. Okay, equality before law and equal protection of the law. Article 15, for the state shall not discriminate against any citizen on the ground of any religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them. Okay, discrimination नहीं किया जाएगा in India against any citizen. On what basis? Religion के basis पे नहीं discrimination होगा, race पे discrimination नहीं होगा, caste के basis पे discrimination नहीं होगा, sex के basis पे नहीं होगा, male female discrimination नहीं होगा, place of the birth नहीं होगा, and any of them. Next, 15(4), state to make special provisions for the advancement of any socially and educationally backward class of citizens, as well as scheduled caste or scheduled tribes. तो अंडर आर्टिकल 15 सब क्लॉज 4 स्टेट जो है, एनी स्टेट है, तो वो स्पेशल प्रोविजंस तैयार कर सकता है फॉर द एडवांसमेंट ऑफ SC एंड ST. तो इट इज अंडर दिस प्रोविजन स्टेट जो है एंड यूनियन है आर परमिटेड टू मेक द रिजर्वेशंस इन द एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशंस फॉर दीज ग्रुप ऑफ सिटीजन. नेक्स्ट इज द आर्टिकल 16, equality of opportunity in the matters of public employment. SC है, ST है, उनके लिए equal opportunity मिलेगी in the matter of public employment. Also, no citizens or citizens shall on the grounds shall not be discriminated on the basis of religion, race, caste, sex, descent, place of the birth, residence. Next, ये जो आर्टिकल 16 जो है, that is the equality of equality in case of opportunities in the matter of public employment, also providing the affirmative action through the reservation of appointments or posts in favor of any backward class of citizens, which in the opinion of the state not adequately represented in the services of the state. As we have already seen Article 17, it abolishes the untouchability and totally forbids its practices in any form. Article 21, life and liberty, right to life and personal liberty. So, no person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to procedure established by law. Supreme Court of India, while interpreting this real meaning of life, has stated in Article 21 does not mean only animal existence, but also to live with dignity. Okay, so when we consider this elderly people, this aged people, this woman, children, migrant, internally displaced persons, sex workers, our Article 21 of Indian Constitution has been extended to life or live with the dignity, or these transgenders also. Article 23 is prohibiting the trafficking in human beings and forced labors. ये जो prostitution किया जाता है, trafficking किया जाता है, kidnapping किया जाता है, abduction किया जाता है, बच्चों को भीख मांगने के लिए मजबूर किया जाता है, okay, लड़कियों को चुरा के उनको भीख मांगने के लिए मजबूर किया जाता है. तो all these considered under the trafficking of human beings. So it is such type of practices are prohibited under Article 23. That is the selling and buying of human beings as a slaves, immoral trafficking in women and children for immoral purposes or for illegal purposes. Article 29(2) जो है वो है no person shall be denied of admission to any educational institution on the grounds only of religion, race, caste, language or any of them. Article 29 जो है वो educational and cultural rights के अंदर आता है, तो वो कहता है कि किसी को भी admission deny नहीं कर सकता under India on the basis of इस रिलीजन से हो, तुम इस रेस से हो, तुम्हारी कास्ट ये है, तुम लिंग्विस्टिक माइनॉरिटी से हो. No person be denied of admission to any educational institution on these grounds. Again, when we consider this Article 36 to 51 of the Constitution, these are the basic fundament, these are the directive principles of the state policy. The importance क्या है ये directive principles of the state policy? को state को ये direction दिए जाते हैं कि तुम upliftment के लिए women के, children के, migrant के, aged persons के, citizens के, okay, agricultural development से related हो, उनके लिए एक डायरेक्शन दिया जाता है. ये प्रिंसिपल्स मेंशन किए गए हैं. These directions are given to the state to make any law, to make any policy. But मेन डिफरेंस ये है पार्ट 3 में जो फंडामेंटल राइट है वो जस्टिफिएबल है. वो उनके लिए हम वो हक हमको बेसिक राइट्स है, उनके अगर वो नहीं मिले तो हम कोर्ट में केस फाइल कर सकते हैं. लेकिन ये जो डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ स्टेट पॉलिसी है दे आर नॉन जस्टिफिएबल. अगर वो स्टेट ने नहीं प्रोवाइड किए तो उनके अगेंस्ट हम केस फाइल नहीं कर सकते इन द कोर्ट ऑफ लॉ. ओके, These are also fundamental in governance and part 4 में दिए गए हैं ये जो डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ स्टेट पॉलिसी. फंडामेंटल राइट्स जो दिए गए हैं वो दिए गए हैं पार्ट 3 ऑफ द इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन एंड पार्ट 4 में डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ स्टेट पॉलिसी. आर्टिकल 39 ए क्या कहता है? State has a duty to draft its policy formulations to ensure equal treatment to all its citizens in securing and to see that the right to an adequate means of livelihood to be made. Second, policy towards securing equal pay for equal work for men and women. Also, policy related to protection of health and strength of the workers. आर्टिकल 42 क्या कहता है? सिक्योरिंग जस्ट एंड ह्यूमन कंडीशंस ऑफ द वर्क एंड फॉर मैटरनिटी रिलीफ. आपको ये पता है हम होटल में जाते हैं वहां पे एक बोर्ड लिखा होता है ये इथे बाल कामगार काम करत नाही, बाल मजुरांना इथे काम दिले जात नाही. ओके, यहाँ पे दिए गए हैं राइट्स अंडर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. स्टेट हैज मैंडेटरी प्रोविजंस है कि state must make provisions for securing just and human conditions to work, in just and human conditions of the work, for maternity relief, जो माइंस में काम करते हैं, जो बच्चे अर्लियर क्या था कि एवरीबडी इज लव टू यूज द फटाके वाजवायला सगळ्यांना आवडतात, बट वेन वी सी जिथे फटाके तयार होतात शिवकाशीमध्ये, तर तिथे अंडर 14 इयर्स के बच्चे ही वहां पे काम कर रहे थे. ओके, इट इज अगेंस्ट द ह्यूमन कंडीशन ऑफ द वर्क. So this is the mandatory provision given under the Constitution of the India. Same Supreme Court held that benefits under the Maternity Benefit Act 1961 extend to employees who are casual workers or workers employed on daily wage basis. परमानेंट लोग हैं उनके लिए ही नहीं है, तो कैजुअल वर्कर्स है या फिर डेली वेजेस के बेसिस पे जो काम करते हैं उनको भी ये एक्ट एप्लीकेबल है. Article 44 provides that states shall endeavor to secure for citizens uniform civil code. Again 46 जो है, state to promote special care towards the educational and economic interest of the weaker sections of the people, in particular of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, to protect them from the social injustice and all forms of exploitation. So these are the directive principles under Part 4 of the Indian Constitution, providing the direction to the state to make the provisions for the upliftment of the weaker sections. Again, Article 51A, Fundamental Duties, Part 4A of the Indian Constitution. Every citizen of India, citizens are expected to respect. Please mute yourself.
Okay.
Okay, so Article 51A, citizens are expected to respect the law of the land, to denounce all kinds of discriminatory practices, to extend their support to the socially, economically, and culturally weaker sections of the society, to augment their rights on par with other developed sections of the policy. Article 325 prohibit the disfranchisement on the ground of caste, and Article 243D and 243P of the Constitution provide the reservation of the seats for the women in election to the panchayat as well as in the municipalities. Okay, reservation रहता है. These provisions enable the state to reserve the seats in various parts of the country, to reserve the seats to women, especially that of the reserved categories. Again, Article 330 and 333, reservation of seats for the members of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in union and state legislatures. Article 335 states that claims of the members of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes shall be taken into consideration consistently with the maintenance of efficiency of administration in making the provisions or appointments to the services and posts in the affairs of the union or of a state in order to strengthen these provisions. उनमें भी 82nd amendment था 2000 का, provided that nothing in this article shall prevent in making any provision in favor of the members of SC and ST for relaxation in qualifying marks in any examination, or lowering the standards of evaluation or reservation in matters of promotion to any class or classes of services or post. Okay, so to end the discrimination against SC and ST, number of legislations have been enacted. तो क्या है ये legislations? एक तो है Protection of Civil Rights, Anti-Untouchability Act 1955. Second, the Bonded Labor Abolition Act 1976. Third, the SC and ST Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989. the employment of manual scavengers and construction of dry latrines, Prohibition Act 1993. Okay, so in this case, when I have read this manual scavengers, recently I have gone through one article in the newspaper कि बॉम्बे में टोटल 8 लोग ऐसे हैं जो ये मैनुअल स्कैवेंजर्स का काम करते हैं. तो लेकिन उनके लिए जो legislations है, actually there it is not part of our lecture, but you should know proper implementation नहीं है. जो scavengers, manual scavengers रहते हैं उनके लिए एक अलग डिफरेंट टाइप का एक सूट रहता है, वो उनको पहनना पड़ता है, एंड देन दे गो फॉर देयर वर्क. लेकिन आउट ऑफ दिस ऑल पीपल 8 पीपल है, उनके लिए सिर्फ एक ही ड्रेस है, मैनुअल स्कैवेंजर. सो it is the discrimination, or we can say these are also covered under the vulnerable groups. Now next is the another part. पहले हमने इंडिजिनस पीपल का देखा, फिर हमने एससी और एसटी के लिए क्या प्रोविजंस है इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे और नेशनल लेवल पे देखा. अभी नेक्स्ट कैटेगरी है ये जो डिसएडवांटेज्ड ग्रुप की और वल्नरेबल ग्रुप की. वल्नरेबल ग्रुप और डिसएडवांटेज ग्रुप में ये डिफरेंट है. वल्नरेबल ग्रुप है दे आर इजीली डिस्क्रिमिनेटेड, और डिसएडवांटेज ग्रुप है दो दे आर प्रेजेंट इन द इंडिजिनस पीपल है वो वल्नरेबल में आते हैं. डिसएडवांटेज ग्रुप्स है ये जो एल्डरली पीपल है, माइग्रेंट है, सेक्स वर्कर्स है, दे आर कमिंग अंडर द कैटेगरी ऑफ डिसएडवांटेज ग्रुप. उनको एडवांटेज नहीं मिलते, दैट्स व्हाई दे आर कॉल्ड एज डिसएडवांटेज ग्रुप्स. ओके, सो राइट्स ऑफ एल्डरली पर्सन्स. According to United Nations observations, elderly people face a number of problems. They include physical as well as problems related to physical security, financial security, abuse, neglect. Human rights belongs to every person, whether the person is old or young, और रिगार्डलेस ऑफ द अदर डिस्टिंक्शंस. ये ऐसा भी इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में या फिर किसी दूसरे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में मेंशन नहीं किया गया कि ओल्ड एज है, यंग है. नो, द इंक्रीज्ड लाइफ एक्सपेक्टेंसी हैज लेड टू एन इंक्रीज इन द नंबर ऑफ पर्सन्स हु आर इन द एज ग्रुप ऑफ 60 एंड अबव. So remember this, United Nations General Assembly has declared 1st October as the International Day for the Elderly People. Later rechristened as the International Day of the Older Person. So 1st October is celebrated as International Day of the Older Person. Now, rights क्या है elderly persons के? So according to United Nations, there are about 737 million older people who are living in the world. By the year 2009, of course, ये number बढ़ गया होगा. By the 2050, as per the projection of this figure may touch around 2 billion. So India is poised to have the second largest number of older persons in the world. The 60 plus population is projected to increase to 100 million in 2013 and to 198 million in 2030. So when we consider the rights of these elderly people, United Nations adopted 18 principles, and these 18 principles has been categorized into 5 clusters, 5 types: independence, participation, care, self-fulfillment, and dignity of these people. So they have conducted a world conference. Among them, second global conference conducted in the 2002 at Madrid. They have adopted a plan of action. तो क्या plan of action था? तो priority areas क्या थे? Older persons and development, advancing health and well-being into old age, and ensuring enabling and supportive environment. So number of other working groups, special commissions also constituted to monitor and to continuously evolve various issues related to these elderly people and to assist the nation's states in this policy making. So ये तो हो गया इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे, और ग्लोबल प्लेटफॉर्म पे ये यूनाइटेड नेशंस का रोल था. Now when we consider the Indian scenario, the number of elderly people are expected to touch 177 million by 2025. So special features of the elderly population in the Indian context are the increased life expectancy, the increased number of female of the elderly population. 75% to 80% of elderly persons live in their rural areas, thus making service delivery a challenge, and 30% of the elderly are leading their life under the below poverty line, and abuse of the rights of elderly at the domestic front. So Government of India has adopted a national policy for older persons in the year 1998. Please mute yourself. So Government of India adopted national policy for these older people or older persons in the year 1998. क्या mention किया था policy में? Parents cannot be evicted from the house in contravention of the law. Second, as per Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, aged parents are entitled to give the maintenance from their children. Also, CRPC में, that is the Criminal Procedure Code के section 125 में भी mention किया गया है कि magistrate जो रहता है can order a person to maintain his old parents under the Maintenance of Parents Act. But the parents has to prove that the son has neglected or refused to maintain the parents and that he or she is unable to maintain himself or herself. As per the provisions of the Domestic Violence Act, elderly parents have a right to seek relief from any kind of abuse. So, Indian legal system में हमारे पास judicial केसेस में भी ये मेंशन किया गया है कि पेरेंट्स को हम घर से बाहर नहीं निकाल सकते. हिंदू एडॉप्शन एंड मेंटेनेंस एक्ट के अंडर ये भी मेंशन किया गया है कि पेरेंट्स की जिम्मेदारी अपने बच्चों पे ही है और बच्चों को ही उनको संभालना है. दैट इज एजेड पेरेंट्स इज एंटाइटल्ड टू मेंटेनेंस फ्रॉम देयर चिल्ड्रन. एंड सेक्शन 125 ऑफ द क्रिमिनल प्रोसीजर कोड में भी ये दिया गया है कि मैजिस्ट्रेट जो है वो ऑर्डर दे सकता है a person to maintain his old parents under the maintenance of a parents act. But here parent को भी प्रूव करना पड़ेगा कि son has neglected or refused to maintain the parents. Now when we consider this act, 2007 का एक्ट है मेंटेनेंस एंड वेलफेयर ऑफ द पेरेंट्स एंड सीनियर सिटीजन एक्ट व्हिच हैज बीन एनैक्टेड इन इंडिया इन 2007. तो सैलिएंट फीचर्स है इस एक्ट के. तो पेरेंट्स हु आर अनेबल टू मेंटेन देमसेल्व्स थ्रू देयर ओन अर्निंग्स और आउट ऑफ देयर ओन प्रॉपर्टी मे अप्लाई फॉर द मेंटेनेंस फ्रॉम देयर एडल्ट चिल्ड्रन. सी टू इट, ये सब लोगों को पता नहीं होता. सब लोगों को ये बात they are unaware of this fact. Parents are having a right. Parents are given a legal rights of, if they are not earning, they can be maintained from their adult children. The maintenance include the provisions of proper food, proper shelter, proper clothing, and proper medical treatment. Now you see this food, shelter, clothing, medical treatment comes under the right to life and personal liberty. राइट टू फूड है, राइट टू शेल्टर है, राइट टू क्लोथिंग है, राइट टू मेडिकल ट्रीटमेंट है. ओके, so these people, elderly people, should not be denied from this free access of these fundamental rights. So parents include biological, adoptive, and stepmother, fathers, whether senior citizens or not. A childless senior citizen who is 60 years and above can also claim maintenance from the relatives who are in possession of or are likely to inherit their property. Okay. तो कहीं कभार ऐसा होता है जो सीनियर सिटीजन होंगे उनके खुद के बच्चे नहीं होते, तो उनकी जो प्रॉपर्टी है वो किसी रिलेटिव्स को देते हैं. तो ये मैंडेटरी है कि जो रिलेटिव है who is taking the property from these senior citizens, who is inheriting the property from these citizens, must maintain these senior citizens, must provide care, shelter, food, medical treatment to these elder people. The application for maintenance may be made by the senior citizens themselves, or they may authorize the persons, or voluntary organizations रहते हैं या फिर NGOs रहते हैं. Either ये कैसे किया जाता है, सीनियर सिटीजन्स है वो खुद ही एप्लीकेशन कर सकते हैं ट्राइब्यूनल के पास, या फिर वो किसी एनजीओ के पास जाके वहां से हेल्प ले सकते हैं, या फिर कोई ऑथराइज्ड पर्सन है उसके हेल्प से ये एप्लीकेशन कर सकते हैं. तो ट्राइब्यूनल में टेक एक्शन ऑन इट्स ओन. कई कबार ऐसा होता है कि ट्राइब्यूनल एक्शन लेता है. ट्राइब्यूनल ऑन रिसीविंग सच टाइप ऑफ एप्लीकेशंस इंक्वायरी की जाती है और ऑर्डर दिया जाता है उन बच्चों को या चिल्ड्रन को टू पे द इंटरिम मंथली अलाउंस फॉर द मेंटेनिंग दीज senior citizens. If the tribunal is satisfied that children or relatives have neglected or refused to take the care of their parents or senior citizens, it shall order them to provide a monthly maintenance amount up to maximum of rupees 10,000 per month. Okay, so this is जो पीपल लॉ के बैकग्राउंड के या फिर जो बच्चे जिनको थोड़ी बहुत इंफॉर्मेशन है उनको पता होगा, जो लोग बाकी के लोग हैं जिनको ये पता नहीं है, दे कैन स्प्रेड दिस अवेयरनेस अबाउट दिस एल्डरली पीपल. सो elderly people have a right under this Maintenance and Welfare of the Parents and Senior Citizen Act under 2007. Why? Because these are also considered as a disadvantaged group. Then the state government is required to set up one or more tribunals in every subdivision. Also यहाँ पे appellate tribunal है. appellate tribunal मतलब जो पहले वाला ट्राइब्यूनल था वहां से अगर ऑर्डर दी गई और ये जो सीनियर सिटीजन है या फिर जो एग्रीव्ड पार्टी है उनको जो डिसीजन दिया गया है, जजमेंट दिया गया है, वो उनको एक्सेप्ट नहीं है, वो उनको अच्छा नहीं लगा, तो वो अपील कर सकते हैं. तो इसके कहाँ पे अपील कर सकते हैं? तो अपीलेट ट्राइब्यूनल में. एंड अपीलेट ट्राइब्यूनल सेटअप किया गया है इन एवरी डिस्ट्रिक्ट to hear the appeals of the senior citizens. So no illegal practitioner is required or permitted for this process. वो खुद जाके कर सकते हैं. लॉयर या एडवोकेट नहीं होगा तो भी चल सकता है. Okay. Again, state government should set up at least one old age home for every 150 beneficiaries in the district. These homes are to provide senior citizens with minimum facilities such as food, clothing, and recreational activities. All the government hospitals or those funded by the government must provide the beds for senior citizens as far as possible. Also, special queues to access medical facilities should be arranged for them. Then next category है, ये तो हो गया aged person का, senior citizens का. Now हमारी next category है rights of persons with disability. Okay, disability, it may be related to any physical part या फिर related to any mental disability. So when we consider this disability, over 650 billion persons around the world are currently living with the disabilities. 650 million. It's a big number. So persons with disabilities make up the world's largest and most disadvantaged minority. The numbers are unfavorable. Estimated 20% of the world's poorest persons are those with disability. 98% of children with disabilities are present in the developing countries. Due to these disabilities, they are not able to attend the schools. Estimated 30% of the world's street children live with disabilities. When we consider the literacy rate in these persons or for the adults having disabilities is as low as 3%. In some countries, persons with disabilities often face discrimination and marginalization. What is the meaning of disability? It refers to any person who is suffering from physical, cognitive, mental, sensory, emotional, developmental problems, or some combination of any of these problems. So disability include impairment, activity limitations रहते हैं, participatory restriction रहता है. Impairment is a problem of body function or structure. So disability, it is a complex phenomenon. So according to World Health Organization, an individual may also qualify as disabled if he or she has had an impairment in the past or is seen as disabled. Kushali, please mute yourself. Thank you. Is seen as disabled based on the personal or group standard or norms. Such impairments may include physical disabilities, sensory disabilities, cognitive disabilities, or developmental disabilities. When there are mental disorders, they are also referred as psychiatric disability or psychosocial disability. And various types of chronic diseases may also qualify or may also considered as a disability. So disability म्हटल्यानंतर हा vast और wide angle आहे. फिजिकल डिसॅबिलिटी आहे, फिजिकल आहे, मेंटल आहे, सेन्सरी आहे, कॉग्निटिव्ह आहे, इमोशनल आहे, डेव्हलपमेंटल डिसॅबिलिटी आहे. ओके. So United Nations at the international platform or globally adopted a convention and a protocol in 2006 and established a special agency called United Nations Enable, which works in close coordination with the various organs of the United Nations. So this convention intends to be a human rights instrument with explicit social development dimensions. It adopts a broad categorization of persons with disabilities and reaffirms that all persons with different types of disabilities must enjoy all human rights and fundamental freedoms. So, when we consider this United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, in short, CPRD, Convention, CRPD, Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities 2006. तो आर्टिकल 1 जो है इस कन्वेंशन का, तो वो डिफाइन करता है persons with disabilities include those who have long-term physical, mental, intellectual or sensory impairments, which in interaction with various barriers may hinder their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with the others. For example, when there is a person with disability, this person need not be viewed as an object of the charity. हम sympathy दिखाने लगते हैं. It should not be viewed as an object of charity. Suppose सामने से कोई आदमी आ रहा है, उसकी आंखें नहीं है, हम सिंपैथी दिखाते हैं. एक हाथ है, एक हाथ नहीं है, हम सिंपैथी दिखाते हैं. सोशल पार्टिसिपेशन नहीं होता उनका, वो मन ही मन में बोलते हैं, we can say they feel guilty, they feel uncomfortable with the normal people. So these persons having disability need not be viewed as an object of charity, but they need to be considered as a subjects with rights. Okay. So when we consider these United Nations Article 1 of the CRPD, they need to be provided with equal opportunities. These disabled people should provided with the equal opportunities in order to enable them to take decisions on their own and to exercise their rights freely on par with the other members of the society. So क्या rights है उनके? Full and effective participation and inclusion of these disabled into various activities of the society, to foster respect for their dignity and autonomy, to provide equal opportunities on par with other sections of the society, to extend equality between men and women of the disabled without any further discrimination on the grounds of sex, to provide accessibility in all respects equally with other persons of the state, non-discrimination on the ground of race, caste, sex, place of birth, etc. Respect for difference of their human diversity. तो ये तो इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे ये कन्वेंशन है. इंडिया में क्या सिचुएशन है? इंडिया principle of the international law of human rights for the disabled persons has been also reflected in Indian constitution by way of providing provisions not only in the fundamental rights but also provided few articles under the directive principles of state policy. So Constitution does not provide, Indian Constitution does not provide for any specific provision dealing with the rights of the disabled persons, but entry 9 of the state list in 7th schedule of the Constitution refers to relief of the disabled and unemployable. Apart from the constitutional provisions, Government of India has enacted different laws for protection and augmentation of rights of these disabled people. The Government of India has enacted number of legislations concerning the rights of differently abled persons. हम disabled भी बोल सकते हैं, differently abled person भी बोल सकते हैं. Indian Lunacy Act, Lepers Act, Persons with Disability Equal Opportunities Protection of Rights and Full Participation Act, National Trust for Welfare of the Persons with Autism, Cerebral Palsy, Mental Retardation, Multiple Disabilities Act, Rehabilitation Council of India Act 1992, the Mental Health Act 1987. So, Government of India has also enacted different legislations for the upliftment of these categories of the people. Next is the minority and human rights. This is the next category under this disadvantaged groups. Human rights are the inalienable rights of humanity. Inalienable means they are or they cannot be separated. Need protection at all times, either by the state or by the international community. So many a times among the various vulnerable groups, minorities' rights are not given due respect and relegated to secondary position. Just a minute, please. So when we consider this efforts of the international community for these minority, they have enacted different legislations. So adoption of a number of instruments on human rights, there is no uniform standard definition of minority. When we consider the minority, each and every country has its own conceptual own definition of minority, own concept of minority. So lack of uniform standard definition, United Nations Subcommission on Prevention of Discrimination and Protection of Minorities formulate an acceptable definition. So, acceptable definition related to minority. What is the meaning of minority? It is a group numerically inferior to the rest of the population of a state in a non-dominant position. Okay, minority का मतलब क्या है? Number of people है, number of section है of the society, और the section of the society जो है वो present है at the inferior level. They are not present at the dominant position, whose members being nationals of the state possess ethnic, religious, linguistic characters differing from those of the rest of the population, and show, if only implicitly, a sense of solidarity directed towards the preserving their culture, traditions, religion or language. So, एक standard definition नहीं था. See to it. Each every country का concept same था कि minority है. Minority है मतलब क्या है? They are not present at the dominating position. Abhilash Tahu, please mute yourself. Thank you. Then, in spite of the crystallization of number of legal regulations through various covenants or conventions by the principles of the international law, the protection of minorities have been slow and fragmented due to the difference or due to the definitional differences. For each country के definition अलग था, concept अलग था of the minority. तो इंटरनेशनल कम्युनिटी ने क्या किया? वेरियस इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स बना लिए. आउट ऑफ दिस, Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide 1948 is the first one to address the protection of minorities through genocide without using the term minorities. See to it, ये जो पहला कन्वेंशन है वहां पे हमको minorities ये वर्ड कहीं पे दिखाई नहीं देता. Still it is related to the minority. So international community has given a number of conventions, treaties for the protection of minority. क्या है? Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination, International Convention of Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, International Convention on Civil and Political Rights 1966, ICCPR बोलते हैं इनको. The Child Rights Convention 1989, UNESCO Convention Against Discrimination in Education, UNESCO Convention on Race and Racial Prejudice 1978, United Nations Declaration on Right of Persons Belonging to National or Ethnic, Religious and Linguistic Minorities 1992. Among all these instruments, ICCPR जो है 1966 का is the most directly binding instrument on the states, parties that addresses the rights of minorities. उनमें directly दिया गया है, state को inform किया गया है कि अगर आप upliftment करना चाहते हो minority section का तो क्या-क्या important points है. Okay, Article 27 जो है ICCPR का, it imposes obligations on the state in recognizing the status of minorities. Next, rights of the persons belonging to national or ethnic or religious and linguistic minorities. Okay, so in 1992 ये जो जनरल असेंबली है यूनाइटेड नेशन की, तो उन्होंने एक डिक्लेरेशन अडॉप्ट किया. क्या डिक्लेरेशन अडॉप्ट किया? Declaration on the rights of persons belonging to national or ethnic or religious and linguistic minorities. ये जो declaration है, it contains total 9 provisions है उसमें. According to Article 2 of the declaration, in general, the minorities possess these following rights: to enjoy their own culture, to profess and practice their own religion, to use their own language in private and public, freely without any discrimination and interferences by the state or any group, to participate effectively cultural and religious, social, economic and public life. Okay, why I'm telling this? I would like to quote one case law related to this: to enjoy their own culture, to profess and practice their own religion. केरला बेस्ड एक स्कूल था, वहां पे 3 बच्चे थे, तो वो जो 3 बच्चे थे वो नेशनल एंथम के लिए खड़े तो रहते थे, लेकिन वो नेशनल एंथम गाते नहीं थे, तो उनके अगेंस्ट केस किया गया. दे आर नॉट गिविंग रिस्पेक्ट टू अवर नेशनल एंथम. लेकिन सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ये जजमेंट दिया कि इंडिया में भी अंडर आर्टिकल 25 ऑफ द इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन हम सबको ये राइट दिया गया है टू प्रोफेस एंड प्रैक्टिस देयर ओन रिलीजन. दे आर नॉट disrespecting our national anthem, but they are practicing and professing their own religion. Okay, so article 25 of the Indian constitution also is based on this, कि the people this minority enjoy their own culture. Under article 29 may, under article 30 of the constitution also, these linguistic minority, cultural minorities, religious minorities, people are providing or they are having a right to administer and to take admission in the educational institutions, and they shall not be discriminated on the basis of religious or linguistic minorities. So minorities in India, according to Government of India, 23rd October 1993, क्या minorities है? 5 religious communities है: Muslim, Christian, Sikh, Buddhist, and these Parsis notified as minority communities. 2001 का census है, 5 religious minority communities constitute 18.42% of the country's population. So to protect these rights of the minorities, Constitution of India made exclusive provisions for this protection and free exercise of their human rights. So I have explained already, that is Article 25 to 28, Article 29 and 30 protect the cultural and educational rights of the minorities. Also, they are providing freedom of conscience, freedom of profess, practice and propagation of religion. Now, when we consider these minorities, Directive Principle of State Policies Part 4 of the Indian Constitution also providing certain rights to these minorities. क्या क्या rights है? Article 51 है, Article 46 है, Article 38 है. Okay, then Article 347 है, Article 350 है, Article 350A, 350B है, Article 25. एक example है these minorities का, जो सिख कम्युनिटी रहती है, सिख कम्युनिटी हैज अ राइट ऑफ वेयरिंग कैरिंग weapons. Okay, so they have a right to profess, they have a right to practice their own religion. Now, National Commission for Minorities. So in spite of these constitutional guarantees, constitutional rights and different enactments, there is a sense of insecurity, inequality, discrimination. So to wipe out these discrimination or this inequality, Government of India in the year 1992 enacted the National Commission for Minorities. In 1993, they established a Minority Commission. According to Section 9 of this Act, Commission exercises the function. क्या function है? वो evaluate कर सकते हैं progress for the development of minorities. They monitor कर सकते हैं working of the safeguard for minorities. They make recommendation for the effective implementation of safeguard for the protection of interest of minorities. They look into specific complaints regarding the deprivation of rights and safeguard. ये जो नेशनल कमीशन ऑफ माइनॉरिटीज है, अगर माइनॉरिटी सेक्शन है तो उनको कंप्लेंट करना है, दे कैन गो फॉर दिस, दे कैन अप्रोच दिस नेशनल कमीशन. दिस नेशनल कमीशन है वो रिकमेंडेशन दे सकता है फॉर्दर इफेक्टिव इम्प्लीमेंटेशन फॉर द प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ इंटरेस्ट ऑफ माइनॉरिटीज. अगेन अंडरटेक स्टडीज, और जो नए नए प्रॉब्लम्स इवैल्यूएट होते हैं, नए नए प्रॉब्लम्स अराइज होते हैं, तो वो उनके रिलेटेड स्टडी कर सकते हैं. दे कंडक्ट सर्वे and they provide appropriate measures. They provide certain solutions to remove these obstacles for the upliftment of these minorities. Next is the Minority Ministry. In the 2006, Government of India established a separate ministry for this rights of minority. Aim and object है to more focus on the issues related to minority, to facilitate the formulation of policy, perspective, planning, coordination, and evaluation. Next part is the human rights of vulnerable groups. Stateless persons है, sex workers है, migrant workers है, और HIV and AIDS victims है. Stateless persons, when we consider this stateless word, immediately the two words should come into mind. एक तो nationality and other is the citizenship. So nationality and citizenship, these two words are generally used as a synonym. Okay, so state may employ principles to confer the citizenship: jus soli and jus sanguinis. That means jus soli means territory of the birth, is to regard all persons as its nationals who are born in that territory regardless of parentage. Okay, जैसे हम यूएस में देखते हैं, इंडिया के लोग वहां पे जाते हैं, सेटल होते हैं, उनके बच्चे वहां पे पैदा होते हैं, तो उनको यूएस की सिटीजनशिप मिलती है. Okay, that comes under the territory of the birth, jus soli. And another है jus sanguinis, parentage. हमारे मदर फादर इंडिया में है तो हमको इंडिया की सिटीजनशिप मिलती है बाय डिफॉल्ट. ओके, ये दो कैटेगरीज है, नेशनैलिटी और सिटीजनशिप. हम जब कंसिडर करते हैं तो जस सोला एंड जस sanguinis. Jus sanguinis is due to the parentage or due to the parents we have the citizenship, and just soli means territory of the birth. तो सच ये लोग कहाँ पे, मतलब ये लोग ऐसे होते हैं, ये जो डिसएडवांटेज्ड ग्रुप रहता है, स्टेटलेस पर्सन. States have an obligation under the international law to confer the nationality. There are a number of reasons of this statelessness. Concept and causes है. Okay, good statelessness है, refugee है, war हो गया दो कंट्रीज में, या फिर हम ये बोल सकते हैं कि asylum यहाँ पे. According to the 1954 UN Convention on the Status of Stateless Persons, a stateless person का meaning क्या है? A person who is not considered as a national by any state under the operation of its law. Article 1. So refugees who are under the protection of United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, persons who have committed a crime against peace, the persons who are considered as a war criminals, the persons who have committed a crime against humanity, or the persons who committed a serious non-political crime outside the country of their residence. So all these are the causes of the statelessness. पहले हमने देखा सिटीजनशिप कैसी आती है, बाय बर्थ आती है, बाय पेरेंटेज आती है, लेकिन ये जो ऐसे लोग हैं उनकी सिटीजनशिप ही नहीं है, वो किसी भी देश के नागरिक नहीं है. That's why they are referred as a stateless person. So international legal standards क्या है? This United Nations Convention जो है for refugee, ह्यूमन राइट कन्वेंशन फॉर द रेफ्यूजी जो है, देयर आर एस्टिमेटेड 12 to 17 million stateless people जो है that are residing in almost all regions in the world. So nationality, as you say, is an important bearing on this individual's legal capacity, no doubt at the domestic level as well as at the international level. So UDHR जो है, UDHR it is an universal declaration of the human rights. तो उसका article 15 ये provide करता है कि all persons have a right to nationality and that no person shall be arbitrarily deprived of one's nationality or forced to change the nationality. So in order to strengthen the international commitment to eliminate the concept of statelessness, in the year 1961, United Nations ने एक कन्वेंशन अडॉप्ट किया, रिडक्शन ऑफ स्टेटलेसनेस 1961 में अडॉप्ट किया, लेकिन वो एनफोर्स कब किया गया? 1969 में. So as the name suggests, reduction of statelessness aim is to reduce the statelessness. So this convention presented more scope to contracting states. So this convention followed the path of 1930 convention on the conflict of nationality laws. उसके बाद ये जो convention relating to status of statelessness persons which came into force in 1969, they have a freedom to practice their religious ceremonies and religious education to their children. They should be accorded same treatment on par with their citizens in various matters. Okay, again, I'm not going in detail due to the time limit. I have to run fast with these slides. So consequences of this statelessness on the human rights क्या होता है? Stateless person जो होते हैं, तो उनको हम illegal immigrants भी बोलते हैं. उनको the denial of minority status. Children born in the territory of residence may face adverse effects. They are facing due to the nationality, lack of nationality, citizenship नहीं रहती, तो उनको basic human rights नहीं मिलते. So these are the disadvantaged groups, or we can say these are also considered as a vulnerable groups. They are vulnerable for attacking. They are not having a enough. They are not in a position to protect themselves. Second part जो है वो है sex workers. Sex workers in this case are the from ancient to modern times, prostitution or the sex work has been in existence in one form or the other. So it is prevalent in all the societies and states across the world in almost all periods. It is the one of the worst form of the violation of the rights of women and girls. So this term sex worker is a broader term and covers a number of sexual services. So according to the preamble of the United Nations Convention for the Suppression of Traffic in the Persons and the Exploitation of the Prostitution of the Others, 1949, prostitution and the accompanying evils of trafficking of the persons for the purpose of prostitution are incompatible with the dignity and worth of the human person and endanger the welfare of the individual and the family and the community. So international level पे क्या उनके लिए provisions किए गए? International agreements on the separation of the white slave traffic came into existence in 1904. United Nations in 1948 amended this agreement in order to cover all types of traffic of human beings. In 1910, International Agreement for the Separation of the White Slave Traffic. The League of Nations adopted International Convention in 1921 for the separation of trafficking women and children. उसके बाद 1933 में International Convention for the Separation of Trafficking Women of full age, separation of trafficking persons and of exploitation of prostitution and others, 1949. Because of the social reform movement, the 19th century, throughout the world, international community adopted a number of international agreements in order to eradicate the illegal acts that were targeting women. And these are the list of the international agreements. What is the international? This is the international level. What about the Indian scenario? In India also prostitution has been prevalent since ancient period. Among the various works, the work of Arthashastra of Kautilya comprehensively dealt with the position of prostitutes in the ancient period. In India also, in ancient India, the word prostitute nearly, there are 250 synonyms were used. In the Middle Ages, the profession was named after a traditional customary name called Devdasi, temple servant, which was widely prevalent in many parts of the India. During the Muslim reign, prostitutes were recognized as a dancing and singing girls. The initiation of legal measures to regulate the sex works and its eradication during the British period could not bring about the desired results. So after the independence, Government of India has enacted different legislations, different acts. तो क्या है? Suppression of Immoral Trafficking Women and Girls Act 1956. This act was extensively amended in 1986 and renamed as Immoral Traffic into bracket Prevention Act 1956, based on the recommendation of the National Law Commission of India. So, Government of India, along with state government, constituted a number of committees based on the judgment of the Supreme Court in 1997, Gaurav Jain versus Union of India, to protect the prostitutes and their children. So, ये जो prostitutes हैं, उनके जो children हैं, they are also vulnerable, comes under the vulnerable groups. They are also comes under the disadvantaged groups. In spite of the best efforts of the state, prostitution is rampant in India for a variety of reasons. It may be poverty, it may be due to the social customs, it may be due to the blind belief existing in the villages, it may be due to the bad company, it may be due to the massive urbanization, it may be due to the misuse of science and technology, and number of reasons are involved in this. Next category is the second last category is the migrant workers. What about the migrant workers? Migrant workers means the people who move होते हैं from one place to another place, that is one country to another country in search of work. But migrant worker has a different meaning, and it has been linked with the different situations in the various parts of the country or in the world. So people who are employed by the official means by any government or international organization, they are not considered as a migrant workers. So according to available estimate, there are about 214 million migrant workers in the world. Out of these, 25% of them do not possess any kind of status. So international level पे क्या किया गया? Whenever the person migrates, human rights of these persons could be affected in many ways. So among them, irregular migrant workers faces severe adverse circumstances. For them, International Labour Organization adopted a number of legal instruments to guarantee the rights of these persons. Among these various documents, Migrant to Workers Supplementary Provision Convention 1975 is an important document. So according to the convention, it is the basic obligation of the nation state to provide opportunity. This convention has been existed from the 2003 and it has 93 articles. So India में भी है, India में इनके लिए various case laws or these migrant workers rights has been evolved through different cases. I'm not going in detail due to the time restraint. Last category is the HIV and AIDS victim. Human immunodeficiency virus has been discovered a serious disease in 1981. At international level, World Health Organization is the most important one that has undertaken a number of efforts. And December 1, 1988 has been declared as a World AIDS Day. They have, United Nations has produced or prepared 8 strategic goals to reduce the sexual transmission of this HIV, to eliminate this transmission. They have given different goals. The various issues, problems, or violations faced by these people, that is the denial of health and care, denial, lack of access of information, lack of access of legal remedies, etc. नेशनल लेवल पे फैमिली सर्वे किया गया और 1992 में नेशनल एड्स कंट्रोल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन प्रिपेयर किया गया एंड apart from this organization, National Institute of Health and Family Welfare has also been entrusted to evolve the suitable policy formulations at regular intervals to tackle the dreaded disease. So this is regarding the vulnerable groups or disadvantaged groups. So thank you so much. The people who have any questions, they can ask the questions.
Ma'am, a few clarifications, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am, first is regarding this vulnerable group and these disadvantaged groups. जैसा कि आप बता रहे थे कि this lady जो Winfrey जो केस बता रहे थे कि she was getting $400
yes,
and all that.
Yeah.
So something like that, मैम यहाँ मुंबई में भी हुआ था जिसमें बॉलीवुड हीरोइंस वर क्लेमिंग कि हमें कम पैसा मिल रहा है, though they were earning crores. तो can they say कि हम vulnerable group या disadvantaged group के में belong करते हैं? Because we are females and getting less money.
Actually, good question. It's a very good question. When we consider, yes, at law point of view, there is a discrimination. They are considered as a vulnerable group. Why? Because there is a discrimination, and under Indian Constitution, Part 4, state has been given directions for equal pay for women and men. लेकिन ये भी मैंने कहा कि these rights are non-justifiable even under Part 4. Okay, वहाँ पे ये मतलब according to literal meaning जो है vulnerable group का, तो ये correct है कि वहाँ पे discrimination होता है, लेकिन ये भी दिया गया है कि ये जो vulnerability है या फिर discrimination है, स्टेट के हाथ में दिया गया है. स्टेट हैज गिवन द पावर्स, स्टेट हैज गिवन द डायरेक्शंस टू मेक पॉलिसीज, टू मेक सर्टेन लॉज रिगार्डिंग द रिडक्शन ऑफ सच टाइप ऑफ प्रैक्टिसेस. Okay, so when we consider the Oprah Winfrey case, it was in the 1980s. Okay, so ये जो हीरोइंस है या फिर सेलिब्रिटीज जो है, नो डाउट दे आर अर्निंग इन crores, but yes, there is a discrimination on the part of this concept.
ठीक है मैम. सेकंड, आपने ग्रुप्स में बताया था कि लेस्बियन, गेज एंड ट्रांसजेंडर्स को आपने इंडिकेट किया था, बट आई बिलीव लेटेस्ट LGBTQ टर्म यूज करने के लिए बताया गया है. तो does this मतलब LGBTQ भी इसमें इन्वॉल्व है या सिर्फ LGBT ही इन्वॉल्व है?
नो, एक्चुअली क्या है, LGBTQ जो है पूरा का पूरा जो है, ट्रांसजेंडर्स भी है उनमें. ओके, तो all these comes under the vulnerability और disadvantage भी हम बोल सकते हैं. If you say अगर एक नॉर्मल बंदा आपके सामने आ गया, ओके, तो आप how you are going to react normally, नॉर्मल आपकी रिएक्शन होगी. लेकिन अगर हम सिग्नल पे खड़े हो गए, तो वो पैसे मांगने के लिए आते हैं ट्रांसजेंडर्स, तो उनको तो नॉट ओनली यू, इट इज अ जनरल स्टेटमेंट, बट उनको ट्रीटमेंट दिया जाता है ऑल ओवर द वर्ल्ड. तो that's why they are referred as a vulnerable. That's why they are referred as a disadvantaged group.
ओके मैम. नेक्स्ट इज मैम एल्डरली जो पर्संस आप बोल रहे हो वो एज 65 एंड अबव की बात हो रही है इसमें या 60?
Yes, 60 age 60 and above.
ठीक है. एंड लास्ट क्वेश्चन मैम, डे आफ्टर टुमारो वी विल बी टेस्टेड फॉर व्हाटएवर वी हैव लर्नड. सो
Yes.
व्हाट इज मस्ट नो फॉर अस इन दिस HR2 कैप्सूल?
I'm concerning about my lecture.
Yes, ma'am.
Please, it's my gentle advice to all of you. Please remember the days. For example, कि elderly people के लिए कौन सा डे हम सेलिब्रेट करते हैं, या फिर ईयर कौन से, in which year they have been enacted. Okay. So it's a little hint to all of you from me. Ki, if you want, you can. Already, I think you have taken the points. Jot down the points from this lecture. But make remember कि short forms क्या है, ये जो conventions है. I think it's enough.
Yes, thank you मैम. आवाज आ रही है मैम मेरी?
Yes.
यस मैम. मैम बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका, क्योंकि लगभग 2:30 बजे से लेकर आप बात कर रही है और आपने बिल्कुल 5 मिनट का भी ब्रेक नहीं लिया है. और ये लेक्चर्स मेरे ख्याल से लगभग 2.25 घंटा हुआ है.
Yeah,
सभी
actually,
विद्यार्थियों की
sorry interrupting to you, but sorry from my side, I have extended some. I have extended the timings.
नहीं मैम, बहुत अच्छा हुआ आपका. और मतलब सभी विद्यार्थियों से ये भी एक सजेशन कल आया था.
Okay.
सभी लेक्चर्स टोटली अंग्रेजी में होते हैं. थोड़ा बहुत हिंदी यदि मराठी यदि होती तो बहुत अच्छा. तो ये सजेशन मेरे ख्याल से आज के लेक्चर से उनको कोई शिकायत नहीं होगी.
Okay, thank you.
आज का लेक्चर आपका कंटेंट भी बहुत अच्छा था. साथ साथ आपने 2 या 3 लैंग्वेज में विद्यार्थियों के साथ बात की. महाविद्यालय की तरफ से और हमारे पूरे MSc पार्ट 1 और MA पार्ट 1 के तमाम सारे विद्यार्थियों से आपको बहुत बहुत आभार.
Yeah, thank you so much. सर MSc कौन से इसमें है?
MSc फर्स्ट पार्ट मैम. सब्जेक्ट ऑल है, मतलब केमिस्ट्री है, मैथमेटिक्स है वगैरह. और साथ साथ MA फर्स्ट पार्ट के भी है, जिसमें हिंदी है, इकोनॉमिक्स है, पॉलिटिकल साइंस है, साथ साथ साइकोलॉजी है.
ओके.
टोटल 13 डिपार्टमेंट के छात्र है जो लेक्चर आपका सुन रहे थे.
ओके.
चलिए, मैं दोबारा आपका महाविद्यालय की तरफ से आभार व्यक्त करता हूँ. साथ साथ हमारी एडिशनल क्रेडिट पेपर की इंचार्ज डॉक्टर मधुरा दामले मैम का भी मैं बहुत बहुत आभार व्यक्त करता हूँ, क्योंकि उनकी वजह से ही ये पूरा हम प्लानिंग कर पाए. साथ साथ हमारे महाविद्यालय के प्रिंसिपल प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर PV बुचड़े सर का मैं स्वागत करता हूँ. और इस कमेटी के अंतर्गत बहुत सारे कोऑर्डिनेटर हर एक डिपार्टमेंट से, उनका भी मैं आभार व्यक्त करता हूँ. जिनके लिए ये लेक्चर्स ऑर्गेनाइज किए गए थे, तमाम सारे MSc पार्ट 1 और MA पार्ट 1 के विद्यार्थियों को भी धन्यवाद. बहुत अच्छी तरीके से आपने सुना. बीच बीच में थोड़ा आपका माइक ऑन हो रहा था, लेकिन बात नहीं है, थोड़ा बहुत होता ही है. यदि मैडम को कोई प्रॉब्लम यदि हुई होगी तो विद्यार्थियों की तरफ से कोऑर्डिनेटर के मतलब इससे मैं आपका मतलब क्षमा प्रार्थी हूँ कि थोड़ा विद्यार्थियों की तरफ से यदि आपको डिस्टर्ब हुआ होगा तो हम आपसे क्षमा मांगते हैं. बहुत बहुत अच्छा मैम. और यहाँ ही यह लेक्चर हम खत्म करते हैं. मैं सभी विद्यार्थियों को विनती करता हूँ कि वो एग्जिट हो जाए. मैम, आपका भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद पुनः. थैंक यू सो मच. थैंक्स मैम. सभी विद्यार्थियों को एक सूचना है कि कल 18
Sir,
तारीख है।
sorry
हाँ
for the
मैम बोलिए।
interruption. Should I end the meeting? Should I leave the meeting?
यस मैम, बिल्कुल मैम, बिल्कुल, यस।
Should I leave the meeting? Yeah.
सभी विद्यार्थियों की एक सूचना है कि 19 तारीख को आपका पेपर है 10 बजे। 10 बजे से लेकर 10:45 तक ये आपका पेपर ऑफलाइन होगा। आपके डिपार्टमेंट में जो भी आपके ह्यूमन राइट्स 2 के कोऑर्डिनेटर हैं उनके साथ बात करिए। 19 तारीख को 10 बजे बिल्कुल आपका ये पेपर ऑफलाइन होगा। और साथ साथ पेपर का स्ट्रक्चर थोड़ा सा मैं बता दूं। यह पेपर आपका ऑब्जेक्टिव है, मतलब क्वेश्चन और उसके नीचे 4 ऑप्शन आएंगे। तो आपको सिर्फ एक करेक्ट आंसर पर टिक करना है, ठीक है। तो इस आधार पर ये प्रश्न पत्र का थोड़ा सा स्वरूप होगा। 19 तारीख को आप सभी विद्यार्थी इसमें शामिल होंगे। और एक महत्वपूर्ण सूचना ये भी है कि दोबारा रीटेस्ट वगैरह नहीं ली जाएगी। सभी विद्यार्थी पुनः यह सुने कि ह्यूमन राइट्स पार्ट 2 की रीटेस्ट नहीं ली जाएगी। यह सूचना नोटिस में भी मेंशन है, इसलिए आप अनिवार्य रूप से कंपलसरी आप 19 तारीख को इस परीक्षा में शामिल हो जाए। आप एग्जिट हो सकते हैं। आप सभी का धन्यवाद।